Hello, I'm Luca Coasters, and today I'll be counting down the top 30 roller coasters that I've ridden. As I'm recording this video, I've ridden exactly 330 coasters in Europe and North America, and I've narrowed it down to 30. I have based this list solely off of how much fun I had on these coasters, so it's completely subjective, but in general, I tend to prefer more aggressive rides with a primary focus on airtime. So, coming in at 30 is Troy at Toverland. This GCI is really fun, with a focus on laterals, but some solid pops of airtime as well. The pacing does relent slightly in a few spots, but I love the layout as a whole, making it one of my favourite GCIs. To be fair, it is fairly rough, but it gives it character, and I was still able to marathon it and ride it 15 times during my visit to Toverland. At 29 is Diamondback at Kings Island. This B&M Hyper has some great, strong and sustained floater in the first half. However, due to the longer staggered seating trains, the pacing in the second half doesn't hold up, as the train can't manoeuvre any tight hills or turns, so it's all a bit drawn out. Some people complain about the roughness of this coaster, which I honestly didn't notice, making it one of the best B&M Hypers that I have ridden, and a great number 1 for Kings Island. The 28th spot goes to Tatsu at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This huge B&M flyer for the most part is a smooth, graceful flight over the park, but obviously the ride's signature element is the immense pretzel loop. I honestly didn't find this element to be too intense, but the sensation of diving down for so long is just surreal. And night rides really bring this ride up another level, as you are flying over a beautifully lit park, making it one of my favourite coaster experiences ever. Coming in at 27 is my favourite GCI, Thunderhead at Dollywood. This ride is similar to Troy in terms of layout, just being smoother, better paced and slightly more intense. When I first went to Dollywood, Lightning Rod was closed, but I still had a blast marathoning Thunderhead. The floater is great and there are some wild laterals. This ride is just so much fun and honestly some of GCI's finest work. At 26 we have Storm Run at Hershey Park. This coaster honestly blew me away. I was expecting a fairly forgettable ride experience, but it ended up as one of my favourites. The launch is solid, the top hat has some amazing ejector, the Cobra Loop was fairly forgettable, but then the flying snake dive is really what made it for me. It has some great ejector entering the element, the first Heartline roll has some good hang time, and then the dive down is so whippy, making it a contender for my favourite inversion. Even those whippy turns at the end that everyone seems to trash on were actually really fun, and for its short duration, Storm Runner really packs a punch. At 25 is another Intamin, and this is Millennium Force at Cedar Point. I again went into this huge Intamin Giga with low expectations, and I was pleasantly surprised. I expected the great sensation of speed and solid positives, but what really surprised me was the airtime. The two huge hills have decent floater which is just so sustained, making it amazing. And then the speed hill has some great strong floater. While this ride isn't the most aggressive, it is just so much fun. The number 24 spot goes to Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia. This is by far my favourite B&M Hyper. While my first morning ride in the back row was just okay, with a disappointing drop but solid floater, when I rode it in the front row I was blown away. Despite the first drop being fairly lacking compared to other B&M Hypers, the subsequent hills are phenomenal. The airtime is so sustained and so consistent throughout the whole hill, and then you also have that really intense helix thrown in there, which almost made me grey out, and then the finale with the smaller but powerful floater hills is amazing. And I also love the janky entrance into the brake run, which throws you around so much. The only reason I don't rank this higher is because it lacks the aggression, but I still love this coaster so much and it's a great icon for Six Flags Over Georgia. So now at number 23, there is a fairly sizable step up in quality as we start getting into the world class coasters. And coming in at number 3 is Goliath at Wallaby Holland. This coaster has some of the best airtime moments in Europe, but unfortunately the pacing kills it, as the helixes and twisted hills are such big dead spots. But I still love the ride for what it is, and the fantastic start with the huge sustained hills, and the ending with the bunny hills makes it rank so high for me. At number 22 is Ghost Ride at Knott's Berry Farm. This coaster combines the best of CCI and the best of GCI, to make one of the overall best traditional woodies out there. The first drop into the first turn is so aggressive as it flings you to the side, and the whole of the second half, from the drop off the MCBR, is just relentless laterals and floater. Yet this ride still manages to be so comfortable, with the smooth GCI feel and the comfy Millennium Flyers. Unfortunately, the first half of this ride isn't quite as well paced, but it is still fun, and I can't forget to mention night rides on this, which ramp up the insanity even more. At number 21 we have Maverick at Cedar Point. This coaster has one of the best layouts of any coaster, with some amazing ejector, positives and whippy transitions, but unfortunately the restraints really hold it back for me. The shaping of the bar that goes over your lap is really uncomfortable, and it detracted from an otherwise amazing coaster. Honestly, if this ride had the new gen Intamin trains, it would for sure be a top 10 for me and a contender for the best ride at Cedar Point. But for now it ranks much lower than that, because I can't overlook those restraints. So, kicking off the top 20 we have X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I unfortunately only got one ride on it, but it was still so much fun. It's really disorienting, but personally I prefer rides that really fling you around and out of the train, which X2 didn't really do for me, but I'm sure if I re-ride it, it'll move up on my rankings, but for now it sits comfortably at 20. At 19 is Taron at Phantasialand. This coaster, based off of what I enjoy, shouldn't be this high, as it is really lacking in the pacing department and only has a couple outstanding elements. But I just can't help but have so much fun on this coaster. The combination of the open trains, the sensation of speed, the atmosphere and the fairly prevalent laterals really make this ride for me. And it's such a marathonable ride, and I can't wait to get back on it when I return to Phantasialand. So now coming in at 18 is Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood. This ride honestly feels like a giga in the first half, with the amazing sensation of speed and positives. But in the second half, the ride feels more like an RMC, with the sharp, strong pops of ejector. The reason this coaster ranks so high for me is because of those amazing restraints, which are tiny, comfortable, and allow you to get loads of room. So on the second bunny hill in particular, you go absolutely flying. This ride is just so much fun, but it is a bit short, and only really a couple elements are outstanding, but nonetheless, I loved riding this coaster over and over again during my visit to Kennywood. The number 17 spot goes to Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This used to be my number 1, but in the 3 years since riding it, I have found 16 more coasters that I prefer. But nonetheless, this is a really fun ride, with great airtime and a fun dueling aspect. Unfortunately, this is my least favourite RMC, as it lacks truly mind-blowing elements, and the pacing at the end of each half isn't the best. Also, the green side isn't quite there in terms of quality. However, it is still such a fun ride which I can't wait to get back on. At 16 is another RMC, and that is Wildfire at Colmarden. Let me just start by saying that this coaster has one of the best starts to any RMC, with an insane drop, a great 0G stall and a really whippy outward bank turn. But after that the pacing really dies down, and all the elements are below average for an RMC. But I still can't ignore how good the first half is, which is why it ranks so high for me. At number 15 is Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia. Despite its small stature, this coaster is so aggressive. The wave turn has some good sideways ejector, and the ending of this ride is just a barrage of laterals and ejector pops, making for a really fun ride which also suits my tastes. Obviously it would be great if this coaster were longer, but with what they had to work with, RMC did a fantastic job. At 14 is Untamed at Wallaby Holland. Untamed is a mid-sized RMC with loads of airtime, but unfortunately it is not the most aggressive, and most of the inversions really hurt the ride in terms of pacing and flow. Nonetheless, the sheer quantity of airtime makes it really fun, and I love the double inverting corner stall, which has some of the most sustained flow through on any coaster. It's pretty much just a mini Steel Vengeance, which isn't quite to my preferences, as I prefer more aggressive RMCs with stronger air and better laterals. So at 13 is Let Coaster at Legendia. This ride just has everything. A crazy first drop, some amazing sustained positives, and some of Europe's best ejector. But for me there's something missing. It is just so precisely crafted that outside of the first drop, it lacks that true out of control feeling, which isn't helped by the vest restraints, which is unfortunately why it doesn't rank higher for me. Also, the pacing towards the end isn't the best, but I still love this ride for what it is, and the first half is absolutely amazing, but it's just slightly too perfect for my liking, if that makes sense. Coming in at number 12 is another compact steel coaster, and this is Lightning Run at Kentucky Kingdom. I just love Lightning Run's layout. It is fast paced, has great ejector, and also has great positives and solid laterals. And what really pushed it so high is just how out of control it feels. It honestly feels like one of the smaller RMCs such as Twisted Cyclone, but with much better positives. The drop is also really good as it is so steep yet so short. And for me the biggest drawback of the ride is the restraints, which are cramped and they can come down easily. But if you are able to not get stapled, then Lightning Run is a truly fantastic ride. At number 11 is Fury 325 at Carowinds. This ride is almost an anomaly in my top 10, as it lacks a strong airtime and it isn't too intense or aggressive, but it is just so much fun. The sensation of speed is amazing, and that combined with the fairly whippy low to the ground turns just makes for such a fun experience. This ride also has a couple great moments of positives in the treble clef, and the floater towards the end of the ride is arguably B&M's best. For a B&M, it just can't get much better, and I hope that they make more rides like Fury in the future. So now we're at the top 10, and this is where the quality gets really high. And kicking off my top 10 is the Voyager Holiday World. Let me just start off by saying that morning and even day rides on this coaster are pretty mediocre, but later in the day, especially at night, this coaster shines. It's filled with flows and some fairly aggressive turns when it has warmed up, and at night the aspect of not being able to see where you're going just makes it even more fun. If I were to base it off of night rides, this coaster would be top 5 for me, but unfortunately the shoddy day rides hold it back for me. At number 9 is El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure. El Toro has some really good strong sustained ejector, but for me it didn't quite live up to the hype. While the airtime is great, it just takes so long to build up to it in the hills, making it feel less aggressive. And the elements don't really throw you around as much. But for a Woody, it has some of the most impressive forces, and it was so much fun to ride, but I don't think it's as wild as some people make it out to be. At number 8 is a huge surprise for me, and that is Hyperion at Energylandia. After re-riding it in August 2020, this coaster jumped 10 spots in my rankings. Not only was it slightly smoother, but it also ran faster as well. I also think that after riding more coasters, my appreciation for the amazing sustained ejector and laterals on this ride has increased. It still has a problem with the pacing and some jolty patches, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I remembered. The drop is one of the best I've ever experienced. The first still has the most sustained moment of ejector on the planet. The twist and dive throws you around so much, and the speed hills and Stengel dives are also fairly aggressive. What really pushes this ride above Toro for me is the ending, as Hyperion really finished with a bang, as it has a couple of great ejector moments leading into the brake run, also with a water splash which can get you soaked. So Hyperion is so much fun and easily one of Europe's best. Coming in at number 6 is Expedition GeForce at Holiday Park. This Intamin Mega has some of the best ejector on the planet in terms of quality. In general, the air is so sustained and so consistent throughout the whole hill, and the second hill and bunny hills in particular are really strong. Also, I can't not mention that drop. It is so whoopy and has some solid airtime as well. Unfortunately, this ride doesn't have the best pacing, as the amazing airtime is interrupted by some bland turns, and this coaster in general isn't as aggressive or dynamic as some newer coasters, but for its time this coaster is simply amazing. At number 6 is Döshvuor's Kernan at Hansa Park. This Gerstlauer Infinity is so wrong in so many ways, but that is what makes it fun. It has some really janky moments of laterals and airtime, such as on the non-inverting Sea Serpent roll, and it has that one transition which is so whippy. The rest of the ride is really fun, with some odd pumps in the track which keep you on edge, overall making for a janky yet fun ride. I honestly didn't find it to be too rough, with only a rattle at the bottom of the first drop. However, the pacing towards the end wasn't the best. Also, a huge part of Kernan is the theming and the soundtrack, which really make this ride special, and it does have a lot of sentimental value for me, as it was the first truly elite coaster I rode, and it was my number 1 for almost 2 years. Unfortunately, it has seemed to have gotten slower and rougher since I rode in October 2017, but hopefully they can fix the problems, as Kernan has potential to be one of the best in the world when it runs well. So now we are into the top 5, and here there is a noticeable jump in quality. So at number 5 is Storm Chaser at Kentucky Kingdom. Based off of the layout and scale, you would assume that this would be a weaker RMC, but no, it just hauls through the layout. All of the airtime is incredibly strong, and it also features great laterals which really complement the airtime. I did enjoy the barrel roll down drop, even though I would have preferred a regular airtime based drop, but from then on it is just constant strong airtime, with the only relent being a 0G roll. But after that you have one of the craziest sequences of any coaster, with the trick track double up. It has such strong airtime that is almost painful. This ride for sure has the strongest airtime on any RMC iBox coaster, and I love the marathoning it, getting a total of 38 rides on this beast. At number 4 is Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. This ride is just amazing because of the sheer quantity of airtime, but for me it lacks the crazy aggressiveness of all the other coasters in my top 5. And honestly the airtime isn't the strongest, and it didn't really throw me around nearly as much as some of RMC's other creations. Nonetheless, this coaster features some amazing elements, such as a top hat and outward bank turn, which all have some amazing sustained ejector, and also the wave turn, which has some great sideways ejector. This ride could be more aggressive, but in terms of quantity of airtime, you can't get much better than Steel Vengeance. So, kicking off the top 3, at number 3 is Zadra at Energylandia. I had a fairly tough time deciding between Zadra and Steel Vengeance, but I settled on Zadra as it has everything I want in a coaster. It has strong forces in every direction and phenomenal pacing as well. In terms of the airtime strength, it is fairly similar to Steel Vengeance, but then Zadra also has much better positives than most RMCs, and easily RMC's best inversions, and also some crazy transitions. The outward banked wave turn and the twisted hill are just so aggressive and throw you around so much, and in general this ride is non-stop. You know you have an amazing coaster when the dead spot of a ride is a sustained ejector hill. Also, this ride didn't even feel too short, but I'd say that the biggest drawbacks with Zadra were that it wasn't quite intense enough, and the airtime wasn't nearly as strong as those in my top 2, and also the restraints could get a bit uncomfortable. But that didn't stop me from absolutely loving this RMC creation. Now, I'm going to be honest here. There is a huge difference in quality between Zadra and my top 2, as these two coasters just take it to another level, but I had such a hard time picking between these top 2. But coming in at number 2 is Skyrush at Hershey Park. This is by far the most aggressive, intense coaster that I've ridden, and it has the strongest airtime positives and laterals on any coaster I've experienced. Not to mention that drop, which is my all-time favourite element on any coaster. I was honestly scared before every ride because of how insane that drop was. Then following that up with 5Gs, then the strongest sustained ejector hills on any coaster. I love how open the trains are as well, and the restraints don't really bother me except for on the brake run. And honestly, the trains really help you enjoy the laterals on this ride. The Stengel dive and twisted hills are just crazy and bordering on painful because of how strong the laterals are. This coaster straddles the line of being too much, and in a couple of moments it oversteps that line, and I honestly love it for that. This is a must-ride coaster, and honestly I could see this ride being my number 1. So coming in at number 1 is the coaster that spotted me back in 2018, and then in summer 2019 I went back to ride it. And it was honestly my most anticipated coaster ever. I have never been more excited before riding a coaster than I was for Lightning Rod at Dollywood. I just had slightly more fun on Lightning Rod than Skyrush, and I honestly can't pinpoint why. I do believe, having spoken with locals, when I rode Lightning Rod it was slightly faster than normal, but I'm not too sure. But anyways, from my experience, every element after the launch has ejector, ranging from weak sideways ejector to strong ejector with laterals, and then the amazing succession of strong bursts of ejector on the quad down. This coaster, while lacking the absolute ridiculous forces of Skyrush, and not even having airtime quite as strong as Storm Chaser, it instead has amazing pacing, an amazing setting, a great sensation of speed, while still having positives, laterals and airtime which throw you around so much. There is not one dead spot on this ride, and even after riding it many times, I still loved it as much as my first ride. I also love how this ride is almost equal in quality in every row, so you can't really go wrong. It's so hard to express how much I enjoy this ride, and it has a special place in my heart. Now let's just hope that they can get this coaster running consistently and to its best form again. So that was my top 30 coasters. I'd love to hear your opinions on my list in the comment section below, and it'd be interesting to see some of your favourite coasters as well. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more roller coaster based content. And hopefully next year I'll be able to add some awesome coasters to this list.